feel you there.
Okay,
Awesome.
it's all good. Yeah, I find that there's usually some good stuff that happens before we like officially started. So I figured it'd be a good
Right.
way to get going. But sorry, you said you almost ate it. What happened?
Oh no, just now, just with my microphone. But yeah, man, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, no, thank you. This, I mean, means a lot just because, um, well, first of all, I think that there's a lot of people that are curious about what you've been doing now, and you've been out of education for over a year now. That's right. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm actually pushing on to 2 years coming this July. So I mean, we're about like a year and a half now.
Year and a half, yeah. And
Hmm.
you know, you're doing so many things not only with real estate, but you've got music center that you're working on, and you've also got some investment stuff going on. So last time we were talking, you had mentioned the investment side, and I was curious, asking questions, and you really kind of you got into a lot of things that I didn't know about, and was like, man, this would be a really good thing to talk about in our next, chance that we get to meet. So, uh, you want to kind of walk us through like your
Sure.
journey of where you started and where you are now?
Yeah. So I pretty much took all of my college life to become a music educator, and I like to think that I really committed to becoming a good one. And I feel like nonetheless, like whether you're becoming a music educator or not, like that degree will push you to make not only just making ends meet, but like also push have you strive for excellence because it's so noticeable when you're not prepared, for a musician. Yeah, and so I essentially just took that same approach when I left the industry for my own personal reasons. Um, but and is one of the things that I had been wanting to do for the longest time was go into real estate and I always thought, I was like, man, I feel like I could be a really good real estate agent. Um, Said the bright-eyed bushy told me, right? And so as soon as 2020 hit, and we all found ourselves with a lot more time than we were normally used to, I essentially just cranked down and I took the classes and I essentially finished each course within a week. Sorry, within the week. And I think by week two, I took all my final exams. And then like there was like a buffer week that the state of Texas was like, well, we'll let you know when you can take your state and national exam. And then by the fourth week, I was licensed. And so, which normally it's like a year turnaround, but like if people that know me, they know I like to like I don't have patience. I just it's like
Yeah.
yeah, I want to do this now. So I was like I could taste it. And when I first got into real estate, like I wanted to so hard. I wanted to so badly be like the commercial side. I wanted like I just felt like I could speak to the number side of things and just being very factual. And fortunately, well, and I think I would say probably in most areas, the commercial real estate world is a very boys' club. Like it's one of those like unless you're related to somebody, it's you better you have to come in knocking hard to where it's hard for people to ignore you. And so so naturally, I found my niche down in the Rio Grande Valley when I first got my real estate license, and I was doing that, selling homes because something that I just can't get into. Like I can't I can't talk to a client and just feel like wow I could feel this for you. I could feel your family could just grow up. I mean I'd be lying to you. But what I do bring, what I do bring is the number sense. It's just like, hey, do you like this? Do you feel a certain way? Does it click for you? Okay, now let's talk about like how we can make this happen, because what a lot of people don't do, and a lot of realtors do. I mean, they're salesmen and they're trying to put food on their table, so understandably so, right? But they just kind of want to go. They want to take that energy of emotion and just move forward with it. But then what happens is when they get to the closing table, a lot of things that weren't necessarily I guess transparent become transparent, and it's like, well, were you lying to me? But I never really was lying to you. I just never touched base on that with you. So and so I felt like that's kind of where a lot of my clients really loved having me around. and one of my clients who actually bought his house through, it was actually like a court case he won from like a truck hitting him and whatnot. Um, he turned around and was like, "Hey, like I felt like you were so you had such a high number sense that I've been curious about investments. Like, how can I make my money make more money?" And that's always such a funny topic because, like, man, like I see a lot of just nonsense on the internet on that topic. it's like it's like, man, if you want to make more money like me, it's like, just stop. It's just stop, man. Like, that's already the wrong approach. But as I kind of define it to him, there's two topics, right? You're looking at passive and active, and then there's even like degrees and gradients of that can, it's like, well, I mean, yeah, you're a landlord and you rent, and people are like, well, that's passive. It's like, no, it's not. You just have to do with tenants.
Yeah,
and
there's still a lot of work in that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of work in that. And for me, like, I even with my tenants that I house, I like to think that there's a customer service in that. I'm not I do my best to not be like the landlord that, like, oh, I just expect my money, and if something busts, best of luck with that. I really do try my best to make sure that I provide a good customer service throughout all my realms. So Randy Sifuentes in 2019, which is a band director, to Randy Sifuentes now in 2020, essentially owns Rosewood Realty, Arkwood Investments, Sifuentes Homes Incorporated, and then Redline Music Center. So I kind of touch base a little bit on Rosewood Realty, and that's pretty straightforward as far as, you're a real estate agent. You help non-real estate professionals either purchase a home or sell a home, or engage with some type of commercial property, whether it's like you're wanting to lease something out. You're just like, oh, I have a business and I'm looking for a lease at this rent. So, okay, well, let's go and find you that spot. So that way we can help grow your business, and let's think about location, what kind of what kind of traffic will be walking by. And that was a big thing that I had to teach clients, was when they look at these rents and they're like, man, that's so high. Why would somebody pay that? And in commercial real estate, it's like you're not. It's pretty straightforward. You're not really filling somebody's pocket. It's because that's the amount of foot traffic that's there. So like one of the highest rents that I've rented out to, my client was so sketchy about it, but I told her, I was like, dude, you have Chick-fil-A 2 doors down.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, that's
it is always busy.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good area then.
Yeah, exactly. And we know Chick-fil-A doesn't just, set up next to Dollar General. No offense. But yeah, it's just, it is what it is, man. And so that's what you're paying for in that regard. And so it's like, no, you're expected to have that foot traffic coming through. So you deal with higher volume, you're gonna have to have a higher rent, and it all fits in there. And that's one of the things that I have enjoyed about dealing with commercial based real estate, is that there's really not a lot of emotional attachment to anything. And that's one thing when I try and work with new clients that are dealing with commercial, or it's their first time investing. I tell them, you have to look at things in terms of numbers. It's either we can make the number happen, or we're not. And if we're not, then we just move away. It's not a big deal. I was talking to a client yesterday, and I presented to her what I mean, honestly, it was a good deal. I told her, hey, this is an off-market property. It is going to be a fix and flip. I told her, or you can do a fix and hold. Whether you want to rent it out or you wanted to do a lease purchase, we can do a lot of things. And I can explain that here in just a minute. But
yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah, but essentially, she was like, well, I don't know, it feels like it needs a lot of work. Now, in terms of Randy's world, it really doesn't need a lot of work, but that's because Randy's already experienced what a lot of work is. A lot of work to me is when you need a licensed person to rent in there. when you need a licensed plumber to run it, when you need a licensed electrician to run it. And that's when it's like, or we're about to break down walls and we're going to reframe. That's different. To me, something like, oh, we just need to do some paint on the kitchen cabinets, on the walls, and then some new flooring, and then okay, let's bust out the tub and put a new one. That's not a problem because Home Depot will sell you a whole tub cutout for $500. You just the biggest part is just taking a hammer and just beating it off the wall. Then you pull it out and then you just plug the new one in and you're like, all right, ready to go. And so to me that's what I see. But my client, she's basically just telling me, hey, my essentially my risk threshold is being met there, and that's okay. It's one of those like, well, we can get there. It's just let's. I understand what you're saying. So let's start a little bit something that's a little more move-in ready. Just heads up, it's going to cost us a little bit more because now someone's making a profit there, which it's not us anymore. We're going to work operating on this side. So it's like, okay, fine, we'll start there. And then now we're like, okay, cool. Like our numbers could have been a lot better if we'd done this, but we're still making money. We're still making it worth our time. Now I think I'm ready to see what it's like to step in that bubble of renovation. And yeah, that bubble can be very, oh man, if you don't take care of that bubble right, you'll screw yourself pretty hard. There's a lot of subcontractors that will say like, oh yeah, I'll do. I mean, man, I had this one person who told me he'll rent framing, sheetrock, paint, a whole custom shower. I mean, just a ton of stuff. And he was like, for a total of $8,000 in labor. And I was just like, how? Like, no one else is willing to do that. But it's because he wanted to say that just to get the job. And then when he started the job, then he was going to be like, oh, well, it took more work than I thought.
Right.
So now I'm going to overcharge. And that's the last thing you need. And that's one of the things, like, again, when we're talking about, investments or commercial real estate, you can also tell the type of person by the kind of number they start dishing out. Yeah. It's just like, you're either a fraud, unfortunately, or you're just highly, highly inexperienced. And right now I can't afford that. I when someone shoots me a number that's too low, I'd rather not see that.
Yeah.
It's like, I need to see things at market value or even competitive market value, like maybe a little bit under. It's like, okay, cool. But when you start telling me you're going to fix up, this is another one, you're going to fix an entire roof for $680, that's including labor and materials, I know you're nuts. Like, I just know you're nuts. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so, so that's one of the things that I bring to my clients is, as first my investors, because now I've been really blessed now to basically have enough investors that work with me that they're essentially just like, hey man, just shoot me the right property and I'll buy it. And I've now have 2 out-of-state investors that I'm working with as well. And essentially, what I do for them is I find a property that is in a town that is in a spot of town that people are not trying to necessarily run away from, and that, people are, when they do sell, they sell in, in a neighborhood that is naturally appreciating, so there's a lot of little things there. And the other part too is I also make sure, this is something I got from my father-in-law, is because he's been in real estate longer than I've been alive, and he's a broker, and he specifically does commercial. And one of the things that he says is, you never buy the castle on the court, meaning you don't buy the most beautiful home in that neighborhood. It's just a little rough to say on live, but it's just the truth, man. I'm totally giving you access behind the doors of like what people, investors say and what we think. And so it makes you a target. If you're not in the best part of town and you buy the most beautiful 2-story home that has everything like, nice and pretty, like, yeah, man, you're going to need some security cameras potentially. And, all these other things that come with it. And that's one of those risks that you get with that. It's like, oh yeah, I want to buy this 4 bedroom, 3 bath house, 3,000 square feet, and it's $150,000. Red flag.
Yeah.
It's like, where is it located? And so, and it's sold for that cheap because people at that point are just trying to vacate the area. They're trying to vacate the area, and a lot of things can be happening. Maybe it doesn't have to necessarily be like a social thing. It can just be that the dang plumbing in that side of town is just so trashed
Yeah.
that it's like, hey, it's trust me, man. People are just trying to leave here, and they're willing to sell this thing for pennies on the dollar. And it does. Even if you do pay a penny, it was still a penny too much. Because now it's your problem. And these properties, they're like babies, man. Like they need to be raised, they need to be cared for, they need to be taken to the doctor, they got to be fixed up, it's just like all these things. And it's like, you got to make sure, like when I do property locating for these investors, that it meets this criteria of, is it in an area that is desirable but affordable for us? It fits within our portfolio. And here's the big one. It's another behind the scenes number. Does it meet our 20% cash on cash return?
Okay.
So yeah. So that's a marker that a lot of mature investors usually run for. 20% is actually for someone who has a low risk. Let me turn that off for a second. Has a low risk threshold, I suppose. Usually your high risk investors are comfortable with an 8 to 12% cash on cash return. What does that mean? It means that for the majority of my investors that operate by that 20%, it means that whenever they put the down payment on that property, which is usually a 20% down payment because they're doing a commercial loan, and then their closing costs, and if there's needing like some repairs, whatever that total expense is, that they can prove that it can rent out or sell whatever, or lease out, excuse me, enough cash to pay them back in 5 years. Okay. Completely. So that's what that 20%, it's cash on cash return. So that's essentially what they're looking for and what I look for. It's like they just want to get paid back within after 5 years. The guys who are a little more than that, like 8 to 12% cats, they're comfortable with doing 10 years. Now, I've got another client who straight up, what he does, he actually accepts 2% cash on cash returns. And you're thinking, man, this guy's like insane, right? He has he has a high risk, like he don't care. But no, what he does, and it's almost like, it just depends on your situation, right? He buys like these corner lots, commercial lots, right by like a major expressway. He builds a big square shell, and he rents that out to Walgreens. So it's one of those, like, yeah, he makes very little cash back, but Walgreens is always going to pay him on time. They're never going to bug him with the AC. They're never going to have like an ugly looking, parking lot. They're never going to bother him for anything. They're just borrowing that shell.
Yeah.
And so it sometimes that number can also be a little deceiving, but it's always good to just lean on the side of like 20% cash on cash return is a good number, because it also, that assuming you incur all your expenses and then you're like, oh, okay, cool, well, we're ready to rock and roll, and then the plumbing goes wrong or something busts underneath the home, and then you go in there and fix it. It's a $300 fix, and then the tenant comes and says, hey, my water went up another $200. Well, who needs to pay that? That's you, Mr. Landlord. And so that's, it adds on top of that. And in commercial real estate, man, like $10 can make or break your deal. So when you're operating like that, it's like, oh man, like that 20% is also assuming that we may take a bigger hit. It may take us a little bit more time, but that's okay. Because starting at 8%, best of luck whenever you have things go wrong. And they will go wrong. They usually go wrong within the first 6 months. And it's not to scare people. It's to be factual, and that's one of the things that I tell my clients is like, I'm not here to scare you. And I know I sound pessimistic, but man, trust me, you do not want an optimistic person in here saying, "Oh no, it'll be fine. It'll be," because that will get very annoying when the person "it'll be fine" is not paying those bills, but you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when I work with my clients, I take it personally. I almost feel like, like it's coming out of my pocket. And in a way it is, because if they lose that trust, well, then I'm no longer their guy.
Right.
And that removes food off of my table. And so with being a consultant, a real estate investment consultant, um, my idea is, so long as I put more food on your table, you will do the same for me. And it's a two-way street, 100%. I don't work with clients that uh, I mean, I won't go too into detail with this last one, but I don't work with clients that tell me like, oh, well, what if instead of me paying you, I'll, whatever properties I don't want, you can have them. It's like, oh, why would I want that?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's
it's,
strange.
yeah, it is. But it just kind of goes, it's one thing I communicate to these clients, like, uh, well, what happens a lot of times in the residential real estate industry is it turns out to be a one-way street, and like that poor realtor is just crossing their fingers that they get paid after 3 months of working their butt off, and then you go through with the deal, and then and there's a lot of things that just happen. But with me and in the investment world, it's like, hey man, like, this is a two-way street. I am just as much responsible for you as you're responsible for me. But trust me, you have somebody that is always thinking about how am I going to help you grow your money.
Yeah.
And of course we try and look for knockout properties. There's been one that I closed on, actually was a 45% cash on cash return. I mean, in freaking 2 years I'm going to pay myself off, or 2 years and 2 months, whatever.
Yeah.
But like, still, those are out there. And I tell my clients, I'll kind of give them the eyebrow, like I'll tell them, hey, if you don't buy this today, I'm going to send an offer from myself tonight. But they know what I mean by that. It's
Yeah.
and they can say no, it's fine. It's up to them. But it's something that, like, I give my clients first dibs.
Yeah.
And I really do, because again, so long as I continue to help them. Hey, Jesse, what's going on? Hold on, give me 1 second.
Yeah. All right. No, you're all good. You're all good. Had to get it going.
Yeah, you're okay.
So, anyways, I think that was a good time for us to kind of segue into some questions I had regarding all the topics that you've covered so far. So, with is it Arkwood Investments is your latest venture that you have, besides the Music Academy? And I was curious how that transfer went from leaving real estate in the Valley of Texas and now moving to a new city. What were two parts to this question? What were some of the biggest challenges transitioning to residential to commercial, and how did your background as an educator prepare you for that?
Yeah, so the biggest challenges, as far as like when it comes to a realtor, like, we operate, and I bet it's probably not just realtors, I'm sure insurance agents operate like this, anybody dealing with sales. Whenever you leave one area that that you're very well accustomed to, people know who you are, and you go into a new area, what gets compromised pretty quickly is your sphere of influence, is what they call it. So the people that will come to you to do business no matter what, because you are in their circle of folks. So when I came here, my circle was was my in-laws, but they tend to stick to themselves as well. So and so that was one of the things that I was like, man, like I got to try and push myself out there. And the educator side of me was just like, as we know, like, we'll see ourselves, I don't want to say fail, but maybe just not succeed, 99 out of 100 times. But that 100th time when you and that student finally click on that one thing, it's like, yes, that's why I joined this. That's why I'm doing this. I love it. And we finally broke through. It's the same thing with the realtor stuff. Like, and Joe, you're very well aware. I mean, I've tried a lot of things. I even went into doing some old school door knocking um, and cold calling, and I tried it all. And then eventually, I just kind of came to the conclusion that I personally don't like my door being knocked on, and I really don't like random people calling me for nonsense. And I also just don't like people lying to me. I mean, what 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 am I supposed to say when someone's like, so what do you want? And then I say this total lie that says something along the lines, well, I just wanted to know how I could help you because that's really just what I love to do. I love to help people. No, I don't. I mean, I do, but like, come on, man. Like, be real. Like, and I think that's what people want. Like, and that's one of the things that I just had to like really, really hone in on with this particular area. Because my other area in down South Texas, like people do know that I want to help. Like that's a no. But when you're introducing yourself like that, it's like, come on, man. Like, get a grip. We already have a big issue with technology not being transparent. And one of the things that we don't like is the fact that like information out there is so skewed and everyone has like an agenda and all these things. So it's like, man, when you do things like that, like you are gonna piss some people off.
Yeah.
And so I had to leave that method pretty quickly. And that was something that, I had paid a real estate coach to just be like, hey man, like give me some alternatives, like something so I can get my business back up and running. And he gave me those and I tried them, but it just like, it just didn't sit well with me. And similar to just being a teacher, you don't want to teach like somebody else. You want to teach authentically to yourself. What's the same thing with me being a realtor or an advisor? I'm as I address people and as I talk to new people, I want to make sure that I do it authentically for me, and not just come up to people and say like, oh, my passion in life is just to help people. Whether I get paid or not is a completely different subject. It's like, no, yeah, no, they work together.
Yeah.
So and it's just true, man. Like even for me, like if and actually I've done this before, when someone tries to come to me like that and say, hey, we can figure out the payment later, that's a big red flag. It's like, no,
Yeah.
dude, like we need clean business practices. I want to pay you. I need to pay you. I'm not asking for discounts because I don't like giving discounts for me either because I'm not giving you a half-ass job. Why would I give you a half-ass price? So the same thing with what you're doing for me.
Right.
Like I don't expect those things. Like so if I pay you full price, then I know you're going to do a full job.
Yeah.
And so it's always just weird to me when people present themselves like that. And again, that's just me. I can probably call up a number of realtors and they'll be like, man, I'm doing the exact method that you're saying that bothers you, and I make tons of money, and that's great. That's good. Or you're very successful and you have helped a lot of people. That's great, man. But it's just not for me. I like to come from the idea that I'm being very real and I'm being very honest. I can tell you what my worst qualities are, and I can tell you what my best qualities are. They're actually both kind of very similar to the same. My worst quality is I don't have patience with myself. My best quality is I get shit done fast. It's the same thing. It's like
Yeah.
yeah. It's one of those like I'm very honest with my clients, and I tell them, look, like I'm um, I'm not here to only pave this one way street, but you have to know that like that my vehicle is a Lamborghini and it's moving fast, and it's okay. You don't have to jump on it all the time. You don't have to jump on every deal that I present to you, but it's just going to go to the next person, and that's just how I operate. I try and take in clients that operate with specific uh, price zones, if you will.
Yeah.
So like, Arkwood in particular has a total of 6 investors that are active. And those 6 investors, they all work together in the same company. So they purchase at $100,000 and below. Right now, since the market is appreciated because of people overpaying on properties, I guess that's now 120 and below. Then I've got, another client who owns an insurance agency he operates within the number of 400 down to 200. That's kind of his window.
Hmm.
But he's also willing to be more versatile. It doesn't have to be a rent house. It can be a restaurant, you know, and it's true. I've done this for him where we go and we purchase the restaurant, the building itself, because why the restaurant owner can't keep up with those bills.
Yeah.
And so what he'll do is we just turn around, we amortize it to go over a longer period of time, and now they can actually now fit that bill,
Hmm.
because restaurant needs to make, well, I think like the standard expense to net ratio in a normal business is like anywhere between 70 to 30 or 80 to 20. You'll pull 30% profit or 20% profit. And the thing is that whenever that rent just gets to eat up beyond 20%, that's like, boom, red flag, red flag. We need to figure something out. And sometimes that's where some of my clients come and help. Like, believe it or not, we all use each other. We all help each other. Is there something in it for everybody? Absolutely. And we do say that up front. 100%. You're getting a 9% interest rate, dude. That's really hot.
Yeah.
But you didn't have to put a down payment. We're not asking you for closing costs. We're just asking you to put your name on the dotted line, and it's going to be amortized over the next 30 years.
Yeah.
So my client gets something out of it, because obviously, I mean, he is a giving man, but he's not a charity. And then you obviously get to continue with your business, and you open your spread up. That way you can continue to eat for the next month and the next and the next.
Right.
And we want you to be successful, obviously, because you've
made an investment in them.
yeah, you know what I mean. So it's important for people to understand that. And I understand there's like a lot of arguments of like, landlords shouldn't be paid to do, etc. It's one of those, like, look, it's a two-way street, man. Like, I do think that there's a lot of bad landlords. Dude, there's a lot of bad property managers out there, that are just wanting and willing and ready to take your money and do nothing to make sure that the value of your dollar is being met
Hmm.
at that unit that you're being rented out.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, but you're charging high dollar, but then when the AC goes out and it's snowing outside, we're like, well, we'll be there in 3 days, bro. I can't even last 3 hours in here.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, it's freezing. Come figure it out, but that's what those property managers get paid for. That's what your rent's paying for. So, in those cases, yeah, those people don't need to be paid. But whenever like you're actually dealing with someone who's like on top of their stuff, and they're firefighters, not fire starters, those are people you want to obviously be working with when you're just a renter, or maybe you want to start your business, and when you want to go on lease, that's your property manager is a big portion of like, is this the place I want to lease from? Because I mean, the owner's not going to get rid of the property manager unless I try really hard to sabotage them. But like, they come with it. They come with that property, and if your business is all of a sudden has a leak and there's water everywhere, and they're like, oh, we'll be there in a few hours, maybe, we have a few other things to do today, we'll get. It's like, dude, man, like, there's some severe things that need to be taken care of, and your job is to take care of this place. Therefore, like, I need you to be here now.
Yeah.
Or we're gonna have to look at the lease, and we'll figure out some other ways.
Yeah. So,
So,
well,
but
a lot of the main themes I keep hearing are a lot of honesty, transparency, and people genuinely wanting to help each other out, which I think is really important because um, ultimately that's what it should be about when you're doing business or business transactions. So that kind of brings me to something else that I wanted to ask you. And um, with anyone that's wanting to get into investing or wanting to get into maybe what you do, or changing careers, like, what would you say to those people? Like, imagine yourself when you were first making a transition out of a career into another one. Like, what was some of the things that just like kept you going?
I feel like there's two parts to that. One of them is how, like, kind of what's going to get your foot in, and then like what keeps you going, right? So the first part is, I think it's super important that you ask the right people. Like, that blows my mind how many people will be like, oh, well, and I'm sorry, I'm going to kind of go off of like what my uh, my culture says.
You
But
can swear. I
well,
don't care. It doesn't matter.
yeah.
It's not tied to anything.
But
This is
well,
being you.
so here's the thing. Here's what blows my mind. It's like, oh well, my Theo who works at Jack in the Box told me that it's not a good idea when I do this. It's like, bro, shut up. What does he know? What does he know? Like, no offense, but like you and your Theo on the same boat. Like you're both trying to console each other out. Like, dude, talk to somebody who is just, I mean, has been in the industry for a long time. Because here's the thing, and this is kind of where I have to pay my dues too, because I haven't been in the industry a long time. Now I do have some success to show for it, which is how I gain some of my clients, but I haven't been in it for a long time. Someone like my father-in-law who's been in it for, I don't know, 40 years. um, that's someone who's figured out how to fail and succeed over and over again, how to feed his 4 children, how to bring home food to his wife, how to have insurance, medical insurance, all those basic necessities. That's someone who's figured it out over that long period of time. They've made it consistent to the point where now they don't freak out about those things. Talk to those people. Like, those are the people you talk. That's the person I rely on.
Yeah.
Like, talk to those people who have just been doing this for a really, really long time. Because trust me, man, I mean, maybe I was lucky in the first part of my career. Maybe I wasn't. I don't know. I did my best, really. But if you were to ask me then at the time, I mean, I can give you some information, but the real people you need to be asking people is the people who have stood the test of time. Ask the right people, talk to the right people, man. Don't and believe it or not, those people are not very readily accessible to you. So you may need to cough something up. You may need to say, hey, can I intern for you for this summer? I'm gonna work completely free. I don't care if I have to file papers, staple them, if I need to wash your car, bro. Like, I just want to be in the room while you're speaking. Yeah. And I'm gonna write down words I don't know. I'm gonna try and Google them, trying to figure out some things. And then if you have time, I'll ask you the question. And if you have time, you'll give me the answer. That kind of person will attract that high level investor to be like, you know what, dude, like, I see myself in you. Like, let me help you with that.
Right.
But yeah, man. But asking your compadre, asking your homeboy, like, who opened a taco stand two months ago, is just like, dude, shut up. So it's just, and I mean no harm to those folks. Honestly, some of their profit margins are insane. Yeah. But like, it's one of those, like, it's like, speak to the people who have history, man, because that's something when you say, like, oh my God, like, my interest rate's going to be 6% on this property, and they're like, bro, you're fine, because at one point interest rates were at 15% for a normal freaking house, because they lived it. So they've seen the market and the temperature of markets and what they do. They've seen patterns. They've seen presidents come in and out, what they do with their staffs, and what that does to our housing of urban development. Mm-hmm. They've already seen that. They know what to be worried about and what not to be worried about. When presidents are like, oh, I'm going to get rid of the 1031 exchange. No, you're not. No, you're not. You know why? Because all your lobbyists rely on that. No, you're not. It's one of those, like, they know what's not to be consumed about.
Right.
Right. And when you're around them, they will bleed all of those 40 years of heartbreak and successful moments onto you within 1 year. And you get to take those 40 years and move forward. And that's what they want from you. You know what I mean? But you have to either know those folks personally, or you need to be ready to do some internships and come right with that. Just be just a go-getter. So that's, to me, like, if you want to step in this industry, make sure you speak to the right person. Because if you're being consulted by the wrong person, man, good best of luck.
So they got their foot in the door. So now what keeps you going?
So what keeps you going? Man, it's the people business. It's the stories of people coming from nowhere and going somewhere. It's a story of, and I'll go back to one of my first clients. Dude, oh my God, it brings me tears sometimes. But like, a custodian who's been a custodian for a school for years and years, saved 80% of his check somehow, every single time and put it in the bank. And he has a family of 4 and a wife, and they're living in, and I saw it, man. They live in a home that, I mean, I don't know how far away I mean, they never really put siding on there. It was just like a tiny 400 square foot thing. And the kids never belittled the father. The father was trying his hardest. He was saving up money, and he chooses me as his realtor to go and purchase his home of $350,000 in cash.
Wow.
You know, and just seeing that family like be welcomed into luxury, and it is luxury, man. It was a 4,000 square foot home, 4 bed, 3 bath. The shower was immaculate. The master shower was so cool. It was literally, you go into like the master restroom, and then you turn and you're like, oh, there's a hallway that goes down into this weird dungeon, because the shower's underneath this thing, and everything's tiled out, and there's water coming from everywhere. These folks deserve that, because they literally took the Dave Ramsey thing to heart.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this man thought, you know, I'm not going to live in these temporary luxuries right now. I'm going to save and save and save, and I'm going to purchase this home. And so much that I didn't even use all my money that I saved. And now I have enough money to purchase some rental properties, some lease purchase option properties. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And now he has some passive income. The guy doesn't work as a custodian anymore, but he used that money to project himself forward. And it's stories like that when I see them right in front of my face, because it's different when you read it on the text. You're like, yeah, you probably inflated that a little bit. Come on, bro. A&E, we do it all the time, you know? But but this was real. And I saw that shit real, you know? And it's the people that keep you going. It's those stories that just like, man, dude, like, oh, it's totally possible, you know, like it's totally possible to live within your means. Some of us really feel like we needed, especially teachers, we really thought we really needed that $4,000 check or $3,500 check. But turns out you can pull it off with $1,500, maybe $2,000.
Yeah.
You know, or you can pull it off with even less. But you know, it makes those you know, those situations just totally possible, and you can live life happily. And I think that's what it is that I love seeing, is just seeing those situations come alive, and be granted the opportunity to facilitate those transactions, and just seeing that family move in, and then, you know, all those kids running around and going and choose their rooms, and you know, and it's just so sweet. And then saying like, oh, we can put the TV here and the couch here, and then they have a little argument where it should go, when the other place they were in, they couldn't even fit a TV or a couch in there. Yeah. You know, the table was literally one square, and they had to alternate who was gonna, you know, the mother and the father let the 4 kids eat first. Once they finish eating, they go to their one room, and they go and sit down. Like, that is humble beginnings, and it is totally possible for people to grow from those things. It's just a matter of, one, either you're gonna have to slug it out on the savings, or you're gonna have to slug it out on going and putting your time into it. It's one of two things. It's either a monetary thing or it's sweat equity. Which one are you gonna choose?
Yeah.
But one of those two is gonna happen. And so it's just one of the sweetest things that happens, and that's just one of the many stories that I get to experience. And dude, so much so, like it does kind of choke me up, because it makes me as a father see, like, man, like that dad had to have a lot of humility, just and believe in himself, and just be like, man, one day I will give my kids everything I can, and that will happen. But so long as they're happy right now in this environment, and we're all together, we're all safe, we will get there. Yeah. You know. And so and for me, yeah, one thing you know, I've mentioned a lot about transparency, but I am big on family. I am big on understanding that is where my priorities are. My priority, really, my most valuable thing that I hold, like, it's not my car, it's not my house, it's not my office, it's not, you know, my bank accounts. It is my time. It is that my time can freely go to wherever I want it to be. And in this particular case, it's the fact that I can take my daughter to the park to play in the snow at 10 a.m.
Yep.
I can take her at 2 p.m. We can go and eat at some fun restaurant that has a bunch of video games, and it's her first time arcade experience, and we get to spend as much time as she wants in there. You know, that's what it was. That's what this industry, and I hate to, because I really do have a high respect for teachers, man. But I think that's one of the things that I just, like, that is much more valuable than any monetary thing that I could possibly receive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I don't make the most money in the world, and I can definitely do better, and I'm gonna keep trying to make sure that I do better for my clients, so I do better for myself in a way. But it's all only to purchase time.
Yeah.
You know, it's all only for that. And it's so I can see my daughter and my son grow up and do great things, and that I can have an influence on their life. And so, and I know that's kind of not realistic, but it kind of is. You know, it comes down to just the fact that we get to choose what we do with our own time when it comes to being a business owner.
Yeah.
And they have their consequences, positive and negative. But I think that's what keeps me going. And that's what I would assume keeps most people going, even if you don't have kids. I mean, if you go down this route, you know, you can wake up at 11 a.m. for all you care. It's up to you. There will be a consequence for that, you know, but it's up to you. So, synopsis, when you're going to get into it, make sure you talk to the right person. You know, I mean, I know you have like some cool personal friends that have had a couple of wins, but talk to someone who's have longevity in the actual industry. And the second thing is, you know, make sure like what keeps you going. Like everybody's is different. What is your most valuable thing in life? You know, beyond anything that is a tangible asset, and stick to that. Understand what your why is and stick to that, and keep coming back to that every time you keep failing, because you will fail a lot. Way more times than you do succeed.
Well, I think that's a good place to probably wrap up on a good note. And, you know, if anybody is interested in investing and, you know, checking out your investment group, where can they find you, and, you know, how can they get a hold of you so they can, you know, learn and request more information? Yeah.
So, they can always go to just my email, which is randy@rosewoodrealtytx.com. You can give me shoot me a call or a text at any time at 956-457-6750, or you can just hit me up on Facebook. I check that way too often.
Okay.
So,
awesome.
yeah.
Well,